Can a workplace be a cult? My name is Richard Turner. I'm a cult recovery therapist and cult psychology consultant. A while back, I was talking to a union rep for an organisation. Of course, I won't say which organisation it was or who it was, but they said something quite interesting. They said that the organisation they worked for was a cult, and the reasoning was that when everything went wrong, if anyone ever complained, he said it was always put back on you. Now, that is what happens in a cult. Cults controlled by blaming and shaming you for everything. It's always your fault. You're never good enough. You never get there. And if you complain or challenge anything, you're the one that's the problem. So he kind of did have a point. It did sound a little bit cult-like. When I think of a cult, I don't think of it as, oh, this is a cult over here and everything else is over here. I see a cult as like a psychological system of control. So for me, it's quite likely a workplace can turn into a cult environment if the managers are narcissistic and controlling and the workplace becomes toxic. Now, after I spoke to that union rep, I went onto LinkedIn and I started paying more attention to what people were posting, and I started noticing post after post after post about burnout. And I started feeling a bit uncomfortable about it because I thought, all of these posts imply it's you and it's your fault. I thought that cannot be the case. Surely burnout isn't always your fault. But when I was looking through the stages of burnout and what causes burnout, I started to feel a bit uncomfortable because the descriptions match some of the experiences of someone who is in a cult. And I started to wonder also, when people leave jobs because they're burnt out and they're off sick, and it takes months and months to recover, is the reason why they've ended up in such a bad place not because they have worked themselves into the ground, but because they have been in a cult and they've been controlled and manipulated to work themselves into the ground. They are actually recovering from a cult experience. Now, I've got an infographic just to the side here, to the side of me here, that I'm going to talk about. I've seen different ideas about the stages of burnout and the process and journey you go through towards burnout. But this particular one stood out to me a lot because some of these stages sound like someone who's experiencing a cult. Now, of course, I have burnt out being self-employed, and you can burn out because, of things that have gone on in your childhood, because of perfectionism struggles, because you just get so carried away with something you don't notice you're not resting as much, and it can be something that we as individuals do have to take responsibility for. But I find it highly, highly unlikely that all burnout is caused by the person. In fact, I would suggest it actually is much more to do with the organisation and management than it is about the individual. Now, I've got this infographic just to the side of me, and I'll leave a link to it in the comments so that you can have a look at it. There's loads of different models from what I've seen from researching this, but this one stood out to me in particular because these look like warning signs of someone who's in a cult. Now, I'll read some out to you. So stage 1 is you feel there is a strong need to prove yourself. Stage 2 is you keep working harder and harder to achieve this. And stage 3 is you begin to neglect your own needs more. Now, the first thing that comes into my mind there is, okay, you might feel the need to prove yourself because of, the parents you had or struggles you've had in your life with the rejection for people. But you might feel the need to prove yourself because you might be in an environment where you're being criticised a lot, or where there's a threat of, if you're not performing to a certain level, you get called in for some kind of concerns about your competency. And what is the cost for not being perfect in the workplace you're working in? Now, cults, you're never good enough. So people work harder and harder in cults to get that reassurance from the leaders. But they're on this treadmill. It's like a carrot on the stick thing. You're never good enough. You never get there. So in these early stages, we've got feel the need to prove yourself. So you work harder and harder to achieve this, and you begin to neglect your own needs more. But what's actually causing that? Are you feeling the need to prove yourself because the people above you are very critical, or because you are very aware that there's going to be a consequence if you're not perfect? Now, stage 4 is you're conflicted and blame others or the situation. Now, you're conflicted and blame others on a situation. What happens in cults is the leadership, they will love bomb you, and also whilst also breaking you down, and that happens in cults quite a lot. What that means is often the person doesn't know what's the actual cause of the problem. So they think it's their fault, or they think it's somebody else's fault. So you often get in organisations that are a bit culty is everyone starts falling out with each other because they're not able to identify the real source of the problem. And part of the reason for that is because the managers and the line managers are love bombing the staff, saying, oh, you're so treasured, you're so valuable here, while at the same time ignoring you when you raise concerns or criticising you or getting angry with you. And because of that love bombing, it can be quite destabilizing. You don't know what the actual cause of the problem is. So that's when conflicts that can start to happen. People in teams can start falling out with each other because they're burning out. And they're burning out because of narcissistic management and really toxic workplace culture, because they've been worked to death, basically. It says here, you change your values to focus on your work more. And I think I said earlier there, you begin to neglect your own needs more. Now, when you're in a cult, you get like the cult becomes your whole identity. That is a warning sign someone is in a cult. Now, if you're under so much pressure from your job and you start neglecting your own needs and you change your own values to not get criticised or punished by the management or called into a competency meeting, then what's happening is your job is becoming your identity. And maybe your values are changing because there's a cognitive dissonance there. You're really, really tired, you run down and burn out and you want to rest. But you're also been love bombed at the same time and told how important it is, the mission of the organisation, and how you're feeling isn't matching the thoughts. So then your values start to change and you change the way you think about your workplace to cope with the cognitive dissonance. You start to deny, stage 6, you start to deny problems that arise due to work stress. You withdraw from social life and your family as well. Again, withdraw from your social life and family. This is what cults do. Like, the cult becomes everything. There is manipulation and guilt and fear used to control. If you're worried about what your line manager is going to say because you're behind on your work, if you're going to get called into a competency meeting, if people are going to start falling out with you because they're going to have to pick up the slack, or if there's just too much work to do, that fear can be really quite overwhelming, and you start working over your hours, and it starts dominating your identity, and then all the things that make you, your family, your friends, your social life, all the other aspects of your personality and your identity start shrinking down, just like they do in a cult. Now, the argument for these kind of models is, oh, well, it's your fault. You've got a desire to prove yourself. It's from your childhood. But you can, in a cult environment, this approach to work and this approach to burnout can be caused by the organisation. Your behaviour changes which upsets your loved ones, stage 8. Well, yeah, because, when people ring me raising concerns about somebody who's in a cult, the first thing I say to them, has the personality changed? And people's personality start changing in a cult because they're developing what's called a pseudo-identity. All their individuality and uniqueness and hobbies and interests and the way they communicate starts changing, and they get a cult identity. And this can start to happen in a workplace. You start changing into the person that management want you to be. And you even get, and I've seen this in workplaces, like thought-stopping cliches, like phrases that are said over and over again, but no one's really analysing what they mean or the consequence to them. So stage 9, depersonalization happens. You do not feel like yourself. Well, yeah, you won't feel like yourself because you start to repress your own needs then and repress your own feelings and stay quiet. Because effectively you could be going through a brainwashing process. This, right? If it wasn't describing burnout, you could change this to sign somebody is in a cult. Pretty much. These stages that are describing a cult experience. So it says you feel empty, numb, and substance abuse occurs. Well, that could be because it's not safe to express how you're feeling in work. It's not safe to approach your line managers. They could be humiliating you. They could get angry with you. You could be afraid of losing your job, afraid of not getting a reference. So how do you survive that? Push the feelings down, push them down. And then effectively you're dissociating from your own feelings. And then the depression seeps in and you get completely exhausted. And finally, you mentally and physically collapse and fall because you're burnt out. As I say, this could be, this could be brought on because of past experiences and all sorts of things. But this is describing a cult experience. This modelling, it feels very much like what happens to someone when they're in a cult. So if you're in your workplace, what would it look like your workplace if it was a cult environment? Pressure to work over your hours, and if you don't, there's going to be some kind of cost. The mission of your job becomes bigger than it just being a job. Like you're striving towards something. It becomes everything. To the point where you're praised for breaking your boundaries, you're praised for working over your hours, and actually it's like a positive reinforcement thing. Being told, praised publicly in front of people, oh, this person's worked an extra 10 hours this week, brilliant. And that love bombing reinforces unhealthy behaviours from management. And even though it's nice to say thank you for someone for helping, that kind of public reward for excessive working can actually be very damaging. You also get these strange social pressures in organisations as well. So if there's lots of people working over their hours every single week, it's very hard to go against that if you're the only one saying I'm not working 60 hours a week, and then it can almost be like a shame, and you can almost be shamed for that because everyone's like, well, everyone else is doing it, why aren't you doing it? And I've heard of like managers saying things like, oh, well, this is a calling, this job, it's not just a job, it's a calling, almost spiritualizing it, and phrases like that can make it seem like it's unchallengeable. You've got some divine purpose in doing this job role, so it's not just a job. So that means you should be working yourself into the ground because this is for a greater mission. It's not just about a job. It can be very difficult to spot some of these things in an organization because what you get is management can be praising you all the time and telling you how amazing you are, and the words aren't matching the actions, so for example, they're telling you how valuable you are, but when you're saying I can't cope with this, I can't do this, they don't listen to you. But the destabilization comes because they're actually making you feel good as well. They're love bombing you and praising you, but practically the words aren't matching your actions. But it's hard to identify where the real cause of the problem is. The other thing that they do as well, like toxic workplaces, they give you training on time management and prioritizing and things like that. So you get all this training that's reinforcing this idea that if you're behind on your work, it's your fault, you're not managing your time properly. Again, that's what cults do. Put it back on you. This is happening in your life because of the sin in your life. It's not us. You're burnt out and run down because you're not managing yourself properly, not because we're exploiting you and manipulating you all the time. And when people leave a work environment like this, and they're burnt out, they can be, the self-esteem is very low. They think they're not good enough. They think they can't do the job. And the reason why they're thinking that is because that's how they're controlled in the job. Everything is made out like it's your fault when actually it's the culture of the organisation. And just like in a cult, it's coming from the people in charge. What you get in a cult is the cult starts reflecting the leaders. And if the leaders are ruthless, lack empathy, they're also charismatic and they manipulate and love bomb, then the whole culture of an organisation and a workplace can become a cult. You stop having time to see your family, you're working over your hours, you're getting exploited. What you're giving back isn't matching the amount of money you're getting paid. And really thinking about this, as I've seen it popped up on LinkedIn, I just wonder how many people out there in the world have left a workplace in utter ruin, really poor self-esteem, thinking that they're just not good enough to do the job, when in fact they've actually just been in a cult. So this is the type of thing that I can, it seems a little bit extreme, but when I saw this infographic, I was like, This could be describing a cult experience. So one final thing is there can be a belief that starts to build up in people that there isn't a better job out there. You know, that some employers chip away at your self-esteem and make you think that this is your only option. I have to do this job. There are no other options. And because the self-esteem is dropping, it can be very hard to think that you're going to get a job anywhere else. But it might be worth, if you're burning out repeatedly in your job, just having to think about what the pressures are in your workplace, and are there some better options out there for you where you're treated better and you're not being manipulated to work yourself to death all the time. Anyway, they're just some reflections I've had. If you wanted to kind of explore this a little bit more, maybe it might be good to kind of read up about cults and see if that does match your workplace or not. As I say, I have burnt out personally being self-employed and where there's been no pressures above me, but that's because of my wounds from the past and things like that. But it could be that actually, if there's lots and lots of people going off sick in a workplace with burnout, it's actually the fault of the employer. Thank you so much for watching this video. Have a great evening or day or morning, and I'll see you in another video. Bye bye.